Google has lost its antitrust battle with Epic Games. A federal jury found the tech giant acted unfairly as a monopoly in the app market. That decision made unanimously after only 4 hours of deliberation. So what does that mean for Google and the overall app market in the long term? We're going to bring in Paul Gallant, TD Cowen's TMT policy analyst, to weigh in here. And Paul, thank you so much for joining us. I'm curious about the differences between Google and Apple with this Epic Games lawsuit. What would you say is the single biggest differentiating factor that could potentially lead to different outcomes between the two here?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think that the biggest difference is that last night's decision was decided by a jury rather than a judge, which is sort of a calculated gamble, I think, by Google to be okay with the jury deciding this case. But it really was an unexpected outcome because the argument, the legal question, was very similar in the Apple and Epic, or the Apple and the Google cases. In fact, Apple is sort of more restrictive and more locked down against competing app stores than Google is. So the fact that Google was more flexible with competitors and customers, and yet they still lost, was kind of a surprise to me and I think a lot of folks.
Can we quantify this, Paul? I see Bloomberg Intelligence estimating that growth headwinds are going to be 1% to 2% for Google Play Store. And we're talking sales, annual revenue going to be about $15 billion. What is your take? How much does this shave off the top?
Well, there is still a ways to go before there's any business model changes by Google here. Google is very likely to appeal last night's decision. And based on the timeline of the Apple case from last year, we're probably not going to get an appeals court ruling until maybe the second quarter of 2025. Only if Google loses that appeal would they then have to make business model changes. So that's probably a mid-2025 timeframe for them to do that. And then lastly, even if they do lose and they have to make changes, they control the playing field, right? Android is their thing. And so maybe we'll get competing app stores and side-loaded apps on Google devices in the future, but that's a very technical situation, and Google has a lot of power to still manage those relationships. So I think it's a setback for Google in this case, but it's not game-changing.
So what does Google do in the next 6 months to a year, Paul, heading into that legal situation that you mentioned? Do you anticipate any changes coming from them that we should be keeping an eye out for?
I don't think on the App Store front there's going to be any changes because I just think everything is going to be frozen until the appeals court rules in the second quarter, roughly, of 2025. I do think there's an interesting potential read-through, though, for Google from last night's decision to the other pending court cases that people have challenged Google on. One is the big search monopoly case happening right now in Washington, D.C., and the other one is the ad tech antitrust case that's going to start in the spring of 24. And I think in both of those cases, the judges and the juries in those cases might well look at the decision last night and go, yeah, maybe we can rule against Google as well because we won't be the first ones to kind of break that ground and declare them to be a monopoly, right? That's what happened last night. This was the first time a court has declared Google to be a monopoly. And potentially in these other two cases that are pending in 2024, last night's decision might give judges and juries a little bit more confidence to go against Google.